It's been over 10 years since Amy Winehouse tragically passed away at the young age of 27 years old. So many of us loved her music, which still lives on today, but not without the realization that her most notorious songs were inspired by arguably one of the most volatile love affairs in pop culture history. The relationship between Amy Winehouse and Blake Fielder can be used as a cautionary tale about the perils of just how destructive and extremely toxic a codependent relationship can be. Blake once compared their relationship to the star-crossed lovers Romeo and Juliet. And sadly, even Shakespeare couldn't have written a more tragic ending story. Amy was an international superstar. She was absolutely beautiful. She was raw, real, humble, funny, talented, and she had a heart of gold. She was a Grammy Award-winning singer, a songwriter who inspired a generation with her music. And despite them only being married for a few short years, Amy's relationship with Blake was a defining period in her life, a life that tragically ended far too soon. So today, let's go back to the beginning, before all of the makeups, the breakups, the heartbreak, and let's explore the very fast, intensely passionate, chaotic, and extremely toxic relationship between Blake Fielder Civil and Amy Winehouse. Before the glitz and glamour, the awards, the fame, the notoriety, and heartbreak, came the day, September 14th, 1983. And on this day, Amy Jade Winehouse was born. She was born in Southgate, London, to Mitch Winehouse, a taxi driver, and Janice Winehouse, a pharmacist. There was a lot of music always playing in the house, and in particular, jazz music.
When I started really hearing jazz, that was it.
Because her father was a huge fan of that genre. And one of his favorite artists was Frank Sinatra. He was always singing Sinatra songs to Amy when she was really little, and as she got older and became familiar with the words of the songs, he would sing the song and he'd intentionally leave out a line and encourage Amy to sing the rest. And then out popped this beautiful little voice.
I was a really good baby. I wasn't a cry baby. I was like, I was just a eat, sleep, and do nothing baby. And then when I was cute until the age of about 5, then I got naughty. I was very naughty, very, very, very naughty. I was mischievous, you know what I mean? I wasn't a naughty 2-year-old. You know how you get your terrible tantrum twos, but I never really did that. It was more just naughtiness when I was about 6. I grew out of it by the time I was about 9 though.
The Winehouse family had a very intertwined connection with jazz music that lasted the span of several generations. Amy's grandmother, Cynthia, was also a singer, and when she was a young woman, she even had a tumultuous relationship with legendary jazz musician Ronnie Scott. The story is that their relationship ended due to a very unreconcilable obstacle. There was basically an ultimatum where Cynthia refused to sleep with Ronnie until the two were married, but Ronnie refused to marry her unless they slept together first. So how many of you think old Ronnie boy was just giving up some empty promises? Because I agree with Cynthia's instincts. She basically said no thanks and moved on. And thankfully, for the sake of all of us, she moved on and ended up marrying Alec Winehouse. And from this marriage, they ended up having a son, Mitch, who is Amy's father, and the rest is history. Cynthia reminds me so much of Amy. And it makes sense why Amy idolized her Nan, as she would call her. Cynthia, like Amy, was very much a free spirit who believed she was a psychic medium. And she taught Amy how to read tarot cards and even allowed her grandkids to smoke. And Amy loved her grandmother so much that she wanted to pay tribute to her by tattooing her likeness on her body with the name Cynthia next to it. And this tattoo is now infamous and it's synonymous with Amy's image. So much so that there's a massive amount of people that want to get the same tattoo, and they flock to her exact tattoo artist. But out of respect, that tattoo artist said that it was so personal that he would never tattoo it on anyone else's body ever again. So Amy's family recognized her love of music instantaneously and early. And by the age of 9, she was enrolled in the Susie Earnshaw Theater School. Her school teacher took notice of her and noticed her talent immediately. Unfortunately, this was also the same year that her parents divorced, and that had a profound effect on her. And a few years after this, she attended the Sylvia Young Theater School. In her audition letter, she wrote, "Mostly I have this dream to be famous, to work on stage. It's a lifelong ambition. I want people to hear my voice and just forget their troubles for 5 minutes." She continued to perform in high school, although she didn't get to stay in school for long.
Happy birthday, dear Laura. Happy birthday to you.
She was kicked out at the age of 16 for failing to apply herself in academics. But, as fate would have it, within 2 years, she would make waves again during a chance encounter at a local jazz club. Amy had always thought that she would probably end up being a waitress in her adult years.
I wanted to actually be a roller skating waitress. I really did. Up until the age of like 16, I was like, I'm going to be a roller skating waitress. I really wanted to do that. I just thought it would be really cool. And then the music thing kind of happened, and I was like, cool, all right.
By the age of 19, her life's course took a sharp left turn during a chance encounter one evening. That night, Amy went to the jazz club called Jazz After Dark, which was owned by a guy that ended up being her really good friend, Sam Shaker. And Sam described his first encounter with her.
One Monday night, the place was completely empty. I found a little girl coming and she said to me, "Can I get in?" I said, "It's a £3 admission. We have a band." And she said, "I don't have money." I said, "I tell you what, yeah, just come." She came and she sat here and to listen to the band. After 5 minutes, she asked me if she can sing. I asked her if she know how to sing. She said, "I sing it for a living." And then I asked the band if they don't mind. They said, okay. I was really amazed. She was unbelievable. She was better than the girl, the professional singer, who I'm supposed to pay her at the end of the night. And since then, we became very, very good friends. She was 16 at this time, but she told me she's 18. We became really good friends. But I noticed that the girl is highly talented. She was unbelievable.
Amy was not only a regular at Jazz After Dark, but she was also a singer at the Cobden Club, and she started to generate buzz around town. Her big break came when her close friend and fellow singer Tyler James sent her demo tape to his record label, and they absolutely loved her sound and signed her immediately. And a year later, at the age of 20, Amy released her first album titled Frank, which she named after Frank Sinatra, who was obviously one of her idols growing up. Her album was a critical success, and with the blink of an eye, she was given an advance 6-figure payout that was used to buy her first apartment in London's Camden neighborhood. Now, Camden at the time was the mecca for both punk musicians and seedy characters alike. And she had nothing but time to work and focus on creating music. And it was during this time, when she would go to the pubs, that she first met Blake Fielder Civil. Amy liked to frequent the bars and play pool, and her favorite and most frequent pub of choice was the Holly Arms, and this was where she first encountered Blake. The pair had an immediate attraction to each other over their conversations while they were playing pool and listening to the jukebox.
Yeah. We're best friends from the start. We're like brother and sister more than anything else.
They immediately began seeing each other and would spend all of their time together. Their relationship was fast, intense, it was passionate, and it was all-consuming. Amy even had Blake's name tattooed on her chest, and then Blake got her name inked behind his ear. And it was around this time that Blake introduced her to substances, which in hindsight he said was one of the worst mistakes that he has ever made in his life. And what you will quickly notice about this couple is that around 6 months into their hot and heavy relationship, it abruptly ended almost as quickly as it began. And Amy was left devastated and abandoned during this time because Blake decided to reconcile with his ex-girlfriend. This completely and utterly devastated Amy, and it led her down a destructive path that would change the course of her life forever. So Amy Winehouse, who at this time was an accomplished singer, songwriter with one album under her belt, was left heartbroken by the devastating breakup. And the split caused Amy to dive into a deep tailspin of depression. She was not able to write or work on her music for almost 2 years, instead using her free time by taking the bottle and going on all-day binges to try and drown out the pain.
I think when I wrote Back to Black, I was left in a situation where I wasn't working, and when I split up with this fellow, I had to go. I didn't have anything to go back to. I guess when you pick up the pieces after a relationship, you go back to what you know, you try and throw yourself into something. And I had nothing, and I wasn't working, so I guess I was just playing pool every day for 4 hours, just getting drunk, you know, having to be carried home in a wheelbarrow.
When reflecting about her life at this period of time, Amy said, "I was really depressed. I was in love with someone and it fell through. A lot of it was to do with bad choices and misgivings. We were both to blame for the split."
I mean, I was so in love at the time, you know, I was like, and I was with someone that I was in love with, you know what I mean? We were in love, you know, we were together. So and that's like a real drug, isn't it? So when it didn't come together, I was just like, you know, it really hurt. But I needed enough distance from it so that it wasn't like raw emotion anymore, but not enough distance that I'd forget.
Her management company and family were getting really concerned about her health, and they pressured her to go into rehab, or at the very least see an addiction counselor. And Amy was quoted as saying, "I was having a particularly nasty time with things and just drinking and drinking. My management decided to stop buying for me and said that they were taking me to rehab. I asked my dad if he thought I needed to go. He said no, but that I should give it a try. So I did, just for 15 minutes. I went in and I said hello and explained that I drink because I'm in love and I've messed up the relationship. Then I walked out."
I just drank myself to the point where I was just ill. And my manager just came around and said, "You should go to rehab." I was like, "What do you know?" And I just literally walked in and the fella said, "Why are you here?" And I was like, "I drink a lot, but I'm in love, do you know what I mean? And I've messed it up." He said to me, "Well, you're not an alcoholic, you're a depressive." And I was like, "Thank you, nice to meet you. Thank you for your time." I left. Didn't bother me. Got a good song out of it.
Amy was determined to solve her issues on her own. Since she was a young girl, her parents described her as stubborn and strong-willed, and Amy was going to do things her way. While rehab was put on the back burner, her record label came up with the idea that she should meet up with the then hot and upcoming producer Mark Ronson. Amy was hesitant at first, but the two really made a connection when they met, and he was hired to produce her second album, Back to Black. So at this point in time, the pain and isolation from the breakup with Blake provided the creative fire and inspiration that influenced that album. And these raw and intensely personal song lyrics were her attempt to come to terms with her loss. Amy once reflected on this period in her life saying, All the songs are about the state of my relationship at the time with Blake. I have never felt the way I feel about him, about anyone in my life. It was very cathartic because I felt terrible about the way we treated each other. I thought we'd never see each other again. He laughs about it now. He's like, "What do you mean? You thought we'd never see each other again? We love each other. We've always loved each other. But I don't think it's funny. I wanted to die."
I've been through times where I've been so dark about a situation that I've had to just be like, write everything down, you know, even feelings that I don't want to acknowledge, especially feelings that I don't want to acknowledge, and things that I wish were not true and they are. And, you know, it's just good because someone else might hear that and be like, I'm not an idiot for feeling them things, or I'm not weak for feeling them things, or I'm not a mug for feeling them things about this man.
And what she says here gives insight into her mindset and honesty. And it's pretty self-destructive thinking, honestly, especially in a codependent relationship like the one that she had with Blake.
That makes me happy. I feel happy when my boyfriend's happy. I feel happy when I'm playing pool. And I just feel happy when I'm out with all my friends having a good time and everyone's enjoying themselves.
She also prophetically said, "The songs I wrote on the album are from times when I was so messed up in the head. I had literally hit rock bottom. I hate to use such a phrase since I'm sure I will sink lower at some point. I was clinically depressed and I managed to get something I'm so proud of out of something that was so horrible." So she was writing songs about things going on in her life, the pressure to go to rehab, and her heartbreak for Blake. And according to her friend Sam, she wrote a lot of the lyrics to the song Back in Black at his club in the back room that she frequented while at the club. Amy channeled all of her troubles, her heartbreak, her pain, her truth into her work. And it was during this time that she penned almost all of her songs on the iconic Back to Black album. Amy talked about how music from the 50s and 60s spoke to her in a more raw and real way than any of the love songs of our day. And this was the type of love that she was fascinated with.
I just like the sentiment of that time where it's like, when you're in love and, you know, so much music nowadays is so like, you don't know me, I don't need you. And all the music then was kind of like, I don't care if you don't love me. I will lie down in the road, pull my heart out and show it to you. Do you know what I mean?
She created one of the most iconic, critically acclaimed, timeless albums that transformed and shaped pop music. And within an instant, she was a household name, plastered on every television show, every magazine, and tabloid. And by the time 2006 rolled around, Amy was on a high professionally. But personally, she was still depressed and in pain at the agony of her personal life. And this is when Blake Civil Fielder walked back into her life once again. In 2007, just as Amy's career was starting to skyrocket, Blake reunited with Amy. Now, there are several accounts of how they got back together. According to Blake's mom, Amy was sending Blake an avalanche of text messages the entire time that they were apart, and Amy convinced him how much she loved him, and then Blake dumped his girlfriend. But other accounts suggest that Blake, with no obvious income of his own, took up with Amy just as she was becoming a rising star, and she had an abundance of wealth. So either way, there was nothing that I can confirm concretely, and I'll leave that up to you for interpretation. But what can't be disputed is how much pain their breakup caused Amy. And I can't even begin to imagine what it would feel like to have the person whose heart you broke write songs about the heartbreak that you gave them, and it be so palpable that an entire generation could feel their pain. And you know what? I've never heard any journalists ask him like what emotions he experienced when he listened to her album. One can only assume. During this time, Amy did an interview with Rolling Stone magazine in which she stated, "All of the songs are about the state of my relationship at the time with Blake. I had never felt the way I feel about him, about anyone in my life. It was very cathartic because I felt terrible about the way we treated each other. I thought we'd never see each other again. He laughs about it now. He's like, what do you mean? You thought we'd never see each other again? We love each other. We've always loved each other. But I don't think it's funny. I was clinically depressed, and I managed to get something I'm so proud of out of something that was so horrible. Within a month after their reconciliation, they got engaged and moved in together. And when asked what it was like to live with Amy, Blake said,
She was great. She was a really good cook too. She's really motherly and a great woman to have around.
Amy has always been the nurturing type. And when you listen to interviews of people, quote after quote, say that she was motherly and that she was always interested in taking care of other people.
I'm very maternal. It's like out of my circle of like 15 close friends, at least 10 of them call me mum. Like I've got this, my friend Richie. Mummy, where are you today? He always texts me, Mummy, you coming out tonight? Mummy, what's for dinner? I'm like, you don't even live with me, Richie. I do like do a thing where, like once or twice a week, I do get all my friends or a few of my friends around and cook for them. Like I'm doing it tonight, I'll do it later, which is mad because I haven't had that much sleep.
They were intensely in love, making out frequently in public and showing off the previous tattoos that they had of each other. And not long after this, Blake says that he made one of the biggest mistakes of his life that he regrets to this day. He said, I made the biggest mistakes of my life by taking substances in front of her. I feel more than guilty. Here's the thing, the more time that they spent together, the more obsessed with each other they became. And it also didn't help that Amy's newfound fame and the press's obsession with her didn't make their lives any easier. Amy was constantly hounded, bombarded, followed, and photographed nearly everywhere she went.
As soon as Amy started getting recognised, more drugs started coming into the equation. That, coupled with the massive fame she experienced, perhaps made her indulge in certain choices that I made when she wouldn't have in the past.
Blake was Amy's crutch, and she wanted him everywhere that she went. Even for work events like photo shoots and interviews, Amy was quoted as saying, "It just made sense for us to be together. When I'm with him, I feel like nothing bad can happen. I can't explain it."
At the time, we were so scared of being separated from each other that we didn't trust other people's motives. There was lots of negative press being written about us, particularly me. We had people outside our house 24/7, shouting our names and trying to take photos with us so they could run a nasty story. You just end up imploding, and the drugs took that pain away.
According to Blake, his parents really liked Amy.
My dad's always said Amy doesn't have a bad bone in her body. She hasn't. And they loved Amy. They just didn't agree with certain things. My mum never really understood why I was vilified.
Blake's mom, Georgette, recalled the first time that she met Amy, and she described her as very friendly and talkative, but also that the couple was really clingy with each other. There was something a bit desperate about the way they wouldn't let one another go, even in our company. And she recalled thinking in the beginning that their relationship was casual and not serious. But after they reconciled, Amy and Blake visited Georgette once again, and she recalled being startled because the pair looked shockingly different. Both looked in desperate need of a shower. Blake was tired and edgy, while Amy seemed dreadfully emaciated and docile. It was a shock, and we didn't know what was going on. They ended up all going to a restaurant, and Georgette recalled, "At the restaurant, the pair were going backward and forward to the toilet, and we suspected that they must be using substances. When we got back to the home, we confronted them, but they denied taking substances, and they said that they were simply exhausted. They were acting very erratic and emotional, sitting huddled at our kitchen table, virtually in tears at one point, and yet unable to articulate why. We were all anxious about their physical and emotional state." So after rekindling their romance after 1 month and getting engaged, the following month, they ended up shocking their friends and family by eloping the following month at an impromptu courthouse wedding in Miami, followed by a meal of burger and chips, and then they stayed at a 48-hour hotel. No parents or family were present. Georgette recalled the first time that she found out that the two were married. Blake called us and said, "Mom, congratulate me, I'm married." Would you like to speak to my wife? She said, I spoke to Amy and they both sounded so happy. When they came home, they emailed us photos of the day they got married and of them speeding around Miami on a boat. But I can't pretend that it was what I had hoped for my son. And that same disappointment was mirrored by Amy's parents. And Janice, who's Amy's mom, was quoted as saying, I think that they're probably both so out of it that when he said, let's do it, she said, okay then. And Amy's family weren't exactly big fans of Blake.
I wasn't blinkered about the opinions they had of me. At the time, I was addicted to drugs, and as far as they were concerned, this was their daughter and they were expressing their views on it. Whether I agreed with them and whether all the blame was rightly put on me was another matter.
And a few months after their wedding, the couple's health didn't appear to be getting any better. Amy was rushed to the hospital for stomach issues where her stomach had to be pumped for substances. She checked into a rehab alongside her husband, and the pair left the residential clinic a few days later and within hours were spotted back on a pub crawl. And their family on both sides, his and hers, were pleading with them behind the scenes to get help, and many stressed that Blake was a bad influence on Amy. Amy fiercely defended Blake at this time, and she made some seriously self-deprecating statements. And guys, this is so sad because it really gives insight into the psyche about her lack of not only self-awareness or self-esteem, but also her codependence on Blake. She was quoted as saying, look at me. I'm a mess. I'm nothing special. In fact, I'm nothing at all. I don't feel good. I don't have talent. I'm nothing without my husband. I love him so much, sometimes it hurts. Without him, I would be nothing, which is why it's so important that we're together right now. I can't be without him. I know I need help, but Blake's the only one who can help me. He's my rock.
It wasn't that rock and roll. There was no cocaine on cornflakes. It might have been spiced up as that, and people might have been stupid enough to see it as that, but it was very lonely, sad, depressing, mistrusting. It was just awful. You wake up and you're poorly, then you have to see somebody you don't really like to pick up drugs, pay a massive amount of money, and then perhaps you can function throughout the day. The nature of addiction is that you have to persevere in it. Otherwise, the physical sickness you get is unbearable. We did try and make wholehearted attempts to stop on a few occasions and went to rehab clinics, but it just wasn't working.
Their relationship had been hot and heavy and destructive up to this point, and so much had happened in such a short period of time. They reconnected, they got engaged, and got married within a span of months. And believe it or not, it will only be a few more short months that pass by before another hardship will strike this couple once again. Six months. That's how long the couple spent reconciled and back together. The 6th-month mark. After that time, Blake was arrested and charged with attacking a pub landowner and obstruction of justice for trying to bribe a witness not to turn up in court. He was jailed for 27 months. And during this time, Amy continued to sell millions of records. She even won 5 Grammys, including Best New Artist, Song of the Year, Album of the Year. And honestly, can we just take a side note for a second? Because one of my absolute favorite moments for any artist ever winning a Grammy is this clip right here.
And the Grammy goes to Amy Winehouse.
She's so authentic and so genuine and so humble and so real and so surprised at her own talent. It was such a pure and genuine moment that I personally could watch this and her face and her expression over and over and over again. And at this time, she dedicated her awards to both her parents and to Blake, who was still incarcerated. Blake couldn't be there to help her celebrate her momentous occasion and her wins because he was still locked up. And during her basically, mandated time apart from Blake, she was forced into really reassessing her life and her relationship. And a year after her win at the Grammy Awards, she made the decision to go to rehab in St. Lucia. And there are so many accounts of her time on the island, which she considered a refuge for her. For starters, there's reports that she saved a woman from drowning. There was this woman named Louise Williams, and she recalled that a 6-foot wave had caught her boat, and she went flying out of the boat and she hit her head on a rock. Amy was 20 meters away, and she ran across immediately to check on her, and she said, "Hey, let's have a look at you." And Louise was certain that the tide would have taken her out to sea if Amy hadn't come to rescue her that day. And Louise was quoted as saying, "I was bowled over by kindness. She went out of her way to help me." Amy later confirmed this incident by stating, "I thought she was going to drown." So by all accounts, Amy was looking healthier. I feel like the beautiful water and the sun and the sand and the relaxation was helping her soothe her spirit and clear her mind and body. And there were so many pictures and videos resurfaced around her of this time, with going horseback riding and singing and even joyously dancing. But internally, she was still doing a lot of soul searching on her life and her relationship. And Blake did not have that much time before he was released from jail. So during this time, there were rumors that were circulating that Amy was having an affair on Blake because she was photographed on the island cuddling up with actor Josh Bowman. And it was during this time that she began to realize just how toxic her marriage to Blake was. And she was quoted as saying, "For the time being, I've forgotten I'm married. I'm just here on my own, happy, having a good time with Josh. I'll deal with Blake when I get back." And a few months later, Blake was finally released from prison, and he immediately filed for divorce, citing adultery. He also said it was intolerable to live with Amy. And by the end of 2009, their once hot and heavy marriage was officially dissolved. But they still couldn't get enough of each other. The media spotted them out on a date within a few months. And according to Blake,
The divorce was purely about putting that era behind us. It was never anything more than a piece of paper to symbolize the end of the drugs, trouble and strife. We decided that we'd try and get back together, but it didn't work out. It was as simple as that. I was staying in Sheffield and wanted to stay up there, and Amy was in London.
no one knows the exact reason why Amy and Blake finally called it quits for good. And who knows if they would have attempted to reconcile years down the road. Both Amy and Blake dated other people after their last attempt at getting back together, but tragically, less than 3 years after their divorce, Amy tragically passed away. Now, Blake went on to have 2 children with his partner, Sarah Aspen, and this is just an even more tragic reminder that Amy had one day dreamed of having lots and lots of children. She had always wanted to be a mom, and her parents really wanted to be grandparents.
I love loads of kids. Loads and loads, at least 6. I know that's really silly, but I'd love that. I'd absolutely love that.
It's just so tragic. And it's a constant reminder of the woman the world lost and the limitless possibilities that could have been. It's just all so sad, guys. Amy's life ended far too soon, and I wish she could have overcome her struggles and get her life back on track. And I do hope that she was able to realize how amazing and talented and gifted and loved she really was. All right, guys. Don't forget to check out the rest of my Crazy in Love series and check out my channel for a whole bunch of other topics that I cover. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so that you are the first to be notified when a new video is released. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.